support and encouragement. And I'm gonna try and be respectable and put my clothes on. I think people can hear me now. Okay, look, I'll put some clothes on to look respectable. Okay, welcome everyone. Let me just check I've got some sort of recording situation happening. Yeah, I believe I have. I'm going to try and make myself a bit more focused perhaps. See if that helps. Okay. All right. So welcome everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you all. Okay, so once I'm just testing with my wonderful tech supervisor in the United Kingdom, Stefan, to tell me it's all okay and we can begin. I've got to wait 30 seconds. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Okay. Stefan, does that sound good? I'll go ahead. I'll talk to you after. Love you. Bye. Okay, fantastic. Everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you very much for coming. And what I'd like to talk about in this session is a title which is a bit of a funny one. It's core stabilization for the entire body. Core stabilization is a very funny term. And in fact, some people commented on my social media saying that term is outdated. And the truth is, it really is an outdated term. If I can give you a bit of history first and then explain what we're going to do. The idea of core stability came in probably around the 1990s when it became quite big, 1980s, 1990s. And I'm an Australian-based, exercise-based physiotherapist. And what we found in the late 1980s, beginning of 1990s, was some really cool results from an experiment that said that if we compared people with healthy backs as opposed to people with unhealthy, unhappy, sore backs, 3 events were slightly different. It wasn't the events, it was the order of the events. And that was that, say for example, a person with a good back goes to pick up a heavy object, pretend this is a plutonium phone. When a person with a good back picks up a heavy object, they do 3 things. One is they think, I want to pick up heavy object. It's a thought. Second thing is their core, their lower abdomen engages. Third thing is their hand reaches out to grab the heavy object. That's the thing that happens, the 3 events that happen in that sequence in a normal, healthy person with a healthy, happy back. Now, what they found was in a person with an unhealthy, unhappy back, the 3 events were still there, but the order was slightly different. So what happens in people with an unhealthy back is, regardless of their abdominal strength or their core strength, it is event 1, I want to pick up the heavy object. That's the thought. Second thing is their hand reaches out to pick up the heavy object. Third thing is their core, their lower abdomen, engages. Now, this is the wrong order. You need your core to fire first, to activate first, before your hand reaches out to grab it. Now, in their first attempt to try and help people with problems, Australian physiotherapists in the late 1980s, early 1990s suggested that if they could get people to engage their lower abdomen first before they reached out to grab the heavy object, this may help prevent back pain. Now, the thing is, it did help a few people, but not everyone. So the problem was engaging your lower abdomen is not as easy as it seems. Now, I always like to start my talks with a top on, so I look semi-normal. But really, I'm talking about the core, and the core is that region really between the pubic bone and the navel. And it's also really the trunk. So I need to show you the trunk, so I'm going to take my shirt off. I don't always not wear a shirt, but it's useful to show when I'm doing things like this. So the situation is that when this bit about core stability came in the late 1980s, early 1990s, there was experimental evidence to suggest that engaging the lower abdomen helps. Unfortunately, it wasn't for another 10 years that the physiotherapists around the world, and especially those in Australia, realized that when they tell someone to engage the abdominal muscles, there's about 4 different ways distinctly of doing this. And they don't always give the same ideal result. I'll talk about that more later. But What they also did was pass it out into the general population that it's important to engage the core. And somewhere along the line, possibly late 80s, early 90s again, this got somehow associated with the yoga terms Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha. And bandha in the world of yoga became synonymous with core stability, especially Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha. And around that time, the early 1990s, myself and my business partner, Bianca Matchless, who's also a very established yoga practitioner and teacher, and also a very good exercise-based physiotherapist, we were studying with BKS Iyengar in India, and he had written a book, and his book was called Light on Yoga. And we referred to his book, and we also were studying physiotherapy. And what we realized after really examining all the work on core stability, all the work on Indian bandha, and all the texts that related to it, was that a bandha essentially was the co-activation or simultaneous tensing of antagonistic muscles or opposing muscles around a joint complex. Now, when I talk about the joint complexes, there are 9 main joint complexes inside the body, and they are the ankles, the knees, the hips, your waist, your chest, your neck, your shoulders, your elbows, and your wrists. Now, when I say joint complex, I mean it's a set of joints working together. I mean, the body has 250 or more physical individual joints, but they all work in groups. So, for example, the elbow has 3 main joints: the joint between the humerus and the radius, the joint between the humerus and the ulna, the joint between the ulna and the radius. But effectively, you only move your elbow as one unit. The shoulder has 4 main joints: the ball and socket joint, called glenohumeral, the sternoclavicular joint, which is where the collarbone joins the breastbone, the coracoclavicular joint, which is where the clavicle or collarbone joins your scapula or shoulder blade, and of course the non-true joint, but still important, very important joint of the shoulder blade moving against the upper back. But effectively, when we use our arms and move our shoulders, we move all 4 joints at once. So it's much more sensible to talk about joint complexes than it is to talk about individual joints. And so when BKS Iyengar started talking about bandha, and he talked about bandha in his epic book, Light on Yoga, in 1966, he said there are 3 main bandhas. And the 3 main bandhas, he said, are called Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, and Jalandhara Bandha, where Mula Bandha related to the lower trunk, below the ribs, Uddiyana Bandha related to the upper trunk, above the rib cage and above the thoracic spine, and Jalandhara Bandha related to the neck and head. And when he said there are 3 main bandhas, the logical conclusion is, well, they're the main ones, there must be more. And when Bianca and I studied ancient texts and really assayed the literature around traditional India, and especially the Siddha Yoga texts on therapy, and also the martial arts texts, the texts to do with the martial arts of India, such as Malakam, which is like pole yoga, and Kalaripayat, which is the martial art of southern India, very powerful martial arts. They talked about other bandhas, bandhas that relate to the other main joint complexes. So the other main joint complexes include the ankle, knees, hips. Well, the bandha you can create around the ankle, knees, hips includes around the ankle, kulpa bandha, sometimes called gulpa bandha. Around the knee, there's janu bandha. Around the hip, there's kati bandha. Then we also have bandhas, or co-activation of opposing muscles, essentially a bandage of muscles around the joint complex, which creates stability and also assists in blood flow around the shoulders, elbows, and wrists. The bandha around the wrist is called mani bandha. The bandha around the elbow is called kurpara bandha. And the bandha around the shoulder is called amsa bandha. The names are not so important. In fact, you can actually Google the words co-activation or co-contraction, which is not a word I like, but is used in physiotherapy texts. And you'll come across many articles about the benefits of co-contracting or co-activating opposing or antagonistic muscles around the knee joint complex, shoulder joint complex, wrist joint complex. And there is many literature studies to say how these co-activations will actually give you tremendous stability around the various joint complexes. So when Bianca and I studied bandha and anatomy physiology and the physiotherapy studies, we really realized that mula bandha is a co-activation of opposing muscles around the waist joint complex. Waist joint complex means everything from the pelvic floor up until just below the ribs, including the abdominal muscles and the lumbar spine and the back muscles. Uddiyana bandha is to do with the chest and the upper back. Now, before you go, hold on, I was told Uddiyana bandha was to do with the abdomen. I can explain why you thought that in a few minutes. Sometimes Uddiyana bandha will have an effect on the abdomen, but it actually doesn't originate there. And let me explain why before you switch off and think, no, he's saying something that's not right. Jalandhara bandha relates to the neck, and it's the one I'm going to explain first because it's the one that's the easiest to understand. And then once we understood that these bandhas are actually the co-activation or simultaneous tensing of opposing or antagonistic muscles around these joint complexes, then we understood why bandha, which is a special word sometimes related to the word lock. That's what bandha sometimes is. It's a lock of what, you might say. And sometimes the word bandha is known to relate to the English word bandage. And so the Sanskrit word bandha relates to the English word bandage. And so when you think about core stability, for example, when a weightlifter picks up a really heavy weight, or if someone has got a bad back, often those people wear a belt around their waist. And that belt helps stabilize their trunk and their lower back. Similarly, if someone has got a wrist problem or an ankle problem or a knee problem or an elbow problem, often you see tight bandages wrapped around these joint complexes, and these bandages give stability to the joints when they're actually doing work. So what it's possible to do is create muscular bandages around the joint complexes to create this stability. And to create a muscular bandage around a joint complex, you need to co-activate or co-contract or simultaneously tense the muscles in front and behind the particular joint complex. And ideally, say for example, it's the knee joint complex you're trying to co-activate, you would tighten the muscles at the front of the knee and the back of the knee at the same time. And you'd also, if possible, tighten the muscles on the inside of the knee and the outside of the knee at the same time. So if possible, there's a bandage of muscles all round this knee joint complex. And some of you have downloaded my free knee program where I explain this, and I'm going to go through it a little bit again tonight. But it's more the theory I want to give you first before we begin attempting and trying to do some of these things. So I'm just going to keep my phone on in case Stefan has to talk to me about something, about like maybe he'll tell me if you can't hear me or something. But let's consider first the idea of bandha in India being a subset of the word mudra. And mudra is the Indian term for energy control. So in the West, when we talk about core stability, most people think that core stability relates to bandha, if you've heard the word bandha, but they associate it with just stability. But actually bandha is a type of energy controlling device. And by the end of tonight, by the end of this talk, I'd like to show you that when you apply bandhas in the right way, they can actually encourage or discourage the flow of blood and energy and information through the various joint complexes. So they are regulators of blood flow That's their primary purpose, especially in Indian yoga. But as a secondary purpose, they can also give tremendous stability around the joint complex, and hence they're also used with things like weightlifting, intense postural work, and martial arts. My feeling is that if you're doing something like yoga, the main feeling should be that of love. If you're doing something threatening for your body, you might use a bandha, you might use a stabilizing muscular lock, but generally it won't give you yoga. It'll just give you the possibility of protecting yourself from doing something very, very dangerous. So think about this, but nevertheless, I'll give you the idea about how you can protect yourself doing potentially dangerous things. All right, let's consider first the bandha, or the stability that we can do around the neck. And then I'm going to use that as an analogy to show you how you can create the same thing around the wrists, and then also around the ankles. Then we'll work on knees and hips, elbows and shoulders, and then I'm going to come to the abdomen and the chest. And that final one, the abdomen and the chest, is a little bit more difficult to understand, and that's why I'm going to leave it till last, although we'll touch upon it. Okay, so the first musculoskeletal control we're going to get will be around the neck. So I'd like you to work with me if you can, but please don't do anything which feels in any way uncomfortable. So what I'd like you to do is face towards your screen. That way you can see me. So you'll be standing like I'm standing here, facing this way. I will occasionally face sideways. I'll occasionally face you, but you please keep facing towards me so you can see me. But sometimes it's better if I face sideways like now, so you get a better view of what I'm doing. So what I'd like you to do first is feel with one hand the front of your neck, with one hand the back of your neck. And I want you to bring the head down and then bring the head back up. And notice, if you feel your neck front and back, as the head goes down, the front of the neck becomes a bit firm. Muscles turn on at the front of the neck. If you lift your head up, the back of the neck becomes a bit firm and the back of the neck becomes a bit muscularly activated. Okay? Now, when you turn one muscle on, the opposite muscle turns off. That's part of a nerve reflex called reciprocal relaxation. So how would you say then it's possible to tighten the front and the back of the neck at the same time? Well, this is only possible to do in a way which bypasses the natural nerve reflex if you incorporate the possibility that we have not just a single joint, we have a multiple joint complex. The neck and the head form at least 7 main joints, and the muscles around the neck joint complex are multiple joint complex. So the possibility of having this co-activation around the neck, which is like a stability function around the neck, like the core stability we create around the waist, which is commonly called core stability. The title of my seminar, remember, is Core Stability for the Entire Body. So I'm talking about core stability for your ankles, knees, hips, waist, chest, neck, shoulders, elbows, wrists. And now I'm talking about the neck. So to create the possibility of tightening muscles at the front and the back of the neck, take into account that it is not just one joint. It is a multiple joint complex, and the muscles in the front and the back of the neck are multiple joint muscles. They go over multiple joints, and they have multiple roles. So now, feel the same muscles can operate your neck. So feel the front of the neck and the back of the neck. Move not your head this time, move your neck. Push your throat and your neck forward. And notice how that tightens the front of the neck. Now move your throat or neck backwards, and that tightens the back of the neck. So it's possible to tighten the front and the back of the neck in 2 ways. You can tighten the front of the neck by bringing your head down or by pushing your throat forward. You can bring the back of the neck to tighten and activate the muscles at the back of the neck by bringing your head up or your chin up or by pushing the neck back. So now we have 2 ways of tightening the front of neck and 2 ways of tightening the back of the neck, which means now it's possible to, at the same time, tighten the front and the back of the neck. And I'd like you to try this gently and carefully, subject to the limitations of your own body. Touch the front and the back of your neck. Bring the head down. That tightens the front of the neck. Now move your neck slightly backwards. That tightens the back of the neck. And now head down, neck back. That will stabilize your neck. And that gives you something which you can use then in various postures. So let's see what happens if you don't do this. There is no wrong or right, but what we want is for people with bad necks or weak necks or people doing potentially dangerous things for the neck to be stable. So see what happens if you only tighten the front of the neck. So let's do this for a moment and just notice, do it carefully if it feels uncomfortable for you. Again, the safest way for the neck is bring the head down, tightens front of neck, move the neck back, tightens back of the neck, relax your jaw, and that will keep your neck stable. It gives co-activation of the opposing muscles around the neck joint complex. In Indian yoga, it's a type of Jalandhara bandha. Now, if we tighten just the front of the neck by bringing the head down and moving the neck forward, then if you try it, it makes you feel like a turtle, which is not so nice. So better head down, neck back. Now, subject to your back, your body, I'd like you to either try the next exercise or simply watch it if you have neck problems or lower back problems. And that exercise will be to sit, and you can sit like I am now with your feet in front of you. And I'm going to show you how if you do a simple sit-up, it's better to hold this co-activation around the neck joint complex, which in Indian yoga is called Jalandhara bandha, but in Western physiotherapy, you can just call it co-activation around the neck joint complex. So what we'll do is we do the safe way with the co-activation, bring your head down, move your neck back, relax the jaw, then just see if you can roll back. Now maybe you can only come back this far, but someone who've got good neck and good spine can maybe roll all the way down onto your lower back and then carefully come back up again. And when you apply this Jalandhara bandha, it should feel fine for your neck. Now, let's take that away and see if it makes you feel worse or different. Most people find this feels less comfortable. Please do not do this if you've got a neck problem. Simply watch for this exercise. Let's take away this joint complex co-activation of opposing muscles by bringing the head down, which tightens front of neck, and moving the neck forward, which also tightens the front of the neck, which means the back of the neck has no muscular activation. So the head down, neck forward, start to go backwards. And notice for most people, it feels already uncomfortable. And if you were to go down the whole way and come up from bleeding from your throat, that doesn't feel nice. So let's try the way that feels nice. Again, best way with the bandha, Jalandhara bandha, or what we call co-activation around the neck joint complex of the opposing muscles, neck extensors and flexors. Head down, tighten the front of the neck back, tighten the back of the neck, jaw relaxed and roll down only as far as you can, maybe only halfway, and then go down the rest of the way and come up. If you feel you can't talk or it feels uncomfortable while doing that, it probably means you're doing something not good for you. Remember, face me while we're doing this, otherwise your neck will be uncomfortable. All right. That is a reason why the Jalandhara bandha, or this co-activation around the neck joint complex, is important to understand. Now, stand up once again, and I'm going to show you something which is very interesting, because many people think that they know what core stability is. Many people think in the world of physiotherapy, they know what core stability of the trunk is. Many people in the world of yoga they think they know what Mula bandha and Uddiyana bandha are. But actually, the confusion, which is all throughout the world, results from the fact there are always at least two distinct ways of creating core stability or creating co-activation around the various joint complexes. One of these ways will cause a restriction of blood flow. It causes stability, but a restriction of blood flow. The other way will tend to cause a different type of stability, but it causes a encouragement of blood flow. This one we can do in this way. So with your neck again, feel the front of the neck, feel the back of the neck. This is very good for neck therapy. Move your throat forward, and then that tightens the front of the neck. Now lift your chin up, that tightens the back of the neck. And now we've got tension at the front and the back of the neck. And by pushing throat forward and chin upwards, you can look up a long way. Now bring your head down, neck back. And that's the best way, perhaps, of lifting your head up. And some people do it automatically. Some people's necks are so comfortable it doesn't matter whether they do it or not. Now what I'd like you to do is to take away that co-activation and lift your head, only tightening the muscles at the back of the neck. Now this again is not wrong or right, but for anyone who has got an uncomfortable neck, this may feel uncomfortable. So do it cautiously. Do it cautiously. I'll ask you to lift the chin up, which tightens the back of the neck. Now move your throat backward, which tightens the back of the neck more, and this usually feels very uncomfortable for most people. So now move your throat forward, chin up, that feels a bit better, and bring the head down, neck back, that feels better still. So when you move your throat forward and the chin up, you can feel it creates a co-activation in the neck joint complex, a co-activation or simultaneous tensing of the muscles around the neck joint complex, but it doesn't do it in a way which completely locks your neck, but it does it in a way which stabilizes it and allows blood flow to take place. Okay, so when we use this, we can use it in positions like, I think in some people's classes they call it the tabletop posture. In Indian yoga they call it Purvottanasana. I'm going to do a simple version of this, and you can attempt it with me. Again, face me, and you can try this. Put your palms on the floor, grip with the fingers, move your shoulder blades forward like I'm doing now, lift the hips up into the air. Now, what I'd like you to do is to see what it feels like to bring the neck back like that. Then bring the head back up, okay, and just sit down for a moment. That's the exercise we're going to attempt in 2 different ways. If you know it's not suitable for you, don't do it. But if you can, I want you to do it in 2 ways. One way gives you the neck bandha. This is what I'll call an expansive bandha, which allows blood flow, but still gives stability. And the other way, we take away the bandha. And then you might notice the neck might not like it so much. Not in everyone, but in quite a few people. So let's try it first with the bandha, then without, then with again. Okay, so palms flat, fingers grip, face towards me, shoulders forward, then lift up the pubic bone, pull the shoulders towards the hips, expand the belly. Now move the throat toward the ceiling, up, then take the chin further back. Don't let the neck come closer to the floor. And that will usually feel okay. Now bring the chin in and sit back down. And when we do it this time, I'm going to ask you to take away that joint stability by not keeping the throat pointing toward the ceiling, but let the throat come closer toward the floor. So watch first. So this is, again, from this position, I take the throat up to the ceiling and take the chin back. Now I'm going to take that away. I'm going to let the throat come closer to the floor. So this is my throat going to the ceiling, throat closer to the floor. So when you take the throat closer to the floor, about maybe 50% of normal adults will start to feel uncomfortable. So be very cautious when you're doing this. I don't recommend doing it if you've got a neck problem. Palms flat, fingers grip, shoulders toward the hips, lift the hips up. Now expand the belly and move your throat toward the ceiling, take the chin up, and then notice if that feels all right. Now, what happens if you take away the muscle tension at the front of the neck, and instead of keeping your throat moving toward the ceiling, let your throat come closer toward the floor and see if that feels less comfortable. Then move your throat up toward the ceiling, bring the chin in and come back down. Now, the stats are that maybe about 50% of normal healthy adults will find it's fine to relax their neck, let it hang to the floor. But minimum of 50% of people will find if they do, their neck feels uncomfortable. And it's really important to say that before they let the head go down, move the throat up toward the ceiling. And this gives a lot more stability. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, when we're working with this concept of co-activation around the neck joint complex, the neck is the easiest one to understand and see why stability comes. The next one that's easiest to understand is the wrist. And so I'm going to talk next about stability around the wrist. And this I found even professional athletes, weightlifters, gymnasts found very useful because some people do it intuitively, but not everyone realizes it. As we move down the list of joint complexes, I'm going to gradually come to the lower trunk, which is what most people call core stability. Know in advance that the trunk can be stabilized by tightening the core. And if you see me from the side, I'll turn sideways so you can see here. If I completely relax my abdomen and let it hang out like a baby's belly, it's completely soft. Now I can tighten my abdomen in 2 distinct ways. One way, I can put my fingers into my lower abdomen and I can pull my navel in toward my spine, and when I tighten it fully, it's pulled in toward my spine. Now, there is co-activation. I feel when I do that, especially if I exhale fully to pull the navel to the spine, it will tighten my back muscles, it will tighten my abdominal muscles. This type of core stability is not wrong, but it will cause a lot of tension. It makes it very difficult to breathe there because the muscles I've used to co-activate around the lower trunk are muscles which oppose the diaphragm. So they will inhibit your diaphragm, inhibit natural diaphragmatic breathing, and make you feel stressed. This particular co-activation blocks blood flow. It is not a good idea that when you tighten your abdomen, you tighten it in a way which is akin to using the exhale fully mode or using the oblique muscles. A better way of tightening your abdomen is a way which you use muscles that when they tighten appear to push the abdomen outward slightly. Now this is a little bit confusing, and I recommend you go to the channel that I've got on the Yoga Synergy site. Go to the Yoga Synergy YouTube channel and look up, is it correct to pull the navel to the spine, yes or no? Answer is yes and no. But how do you do it? Look for this video. I will try and link it in the notes below, and you can see it perhaps on the replay. Then you can understand better about what I'm saying with this. So the other way of making the abdomen firm is a way where if you, say for example, feel your abdomen now, touch your abdomen, lean back. As you lean back, if you're touching your abdomen and pushing your fingers into the soft, relaxed abdomen, if you relax and simply lean back, the abdomen appears to push out into your fingers. Now your abdomen here is firm, but if you relax, you'll find you can breathe diaphragmatically. You can inhale. Your abdomen is firm at the front, but inhaling into the abdomen is easy. This is a good type of core stability, and it's the one that I'll be working towards in the end of the session. It's the one that works best for things like weightlifting, protecting your back, etc. But now just try quickly the one that's not so good, which is still a type of core stability, but one which blocks blood flow and causes stress. And that's put your fingers in your soft abdomen, tighten the pelvic floor, then exhale and pull your navel away from your fingers closer toward the spine. Make the abdomen hard, keep the abdomen hard and in. Now try and inhale into the abdomen. And notice the breath does not want to go low, it comes up into the chest. Because the muscles we've used now to tighten the core are muscles which give a bit of firmness to the core, but they inhibit the diaphragm. You never want your diaphragm inhibited, or else you enter a state of stress. So to make sure your diaphragm's not inhibited, first of all, see what it feels like in the same way that you feel when you're relaxed asleep. Let your belly fully relax. There's no muscle tightening. This is what you do in your most regenerative mode, which is your sleeping mode. So can you relax your abdomen fully, let it hang out like a baby's belly? I mean, no one's going to see you, everyone's seeing me. I'm not shy to let my belly hang out because I'm not doing anything which requires protecting my spine. As soon as your body feels that it needs protection, it enters a state of stress. So just feel what it feels like when your abdomen's completely relaxed. Now take a breath where it feels like the inhalation, although it comes in through your nose, it feels like there's an expansion in your pelvic floor, your lower abdomen, and your lower back. Breathe in. You'll see on me, my chest doesn't move. I inhale, and my abdomen expands. Do one of those breaths. So inhale, expand your abdomen, and then let the air out passively. This is the natural breathing that you do in the most regenerative part of your day, which is sleep. It's the type of breathing that children do, and it's the type of breathing that you really want to do if you're doing anything stressful. Now, the problem is most people's core stability involves something which will disable your ability to do this. So just try it now, and I'm going to move on to the next joint. So what I'd like you to do is tighten the pelvic floor, put your fingers into your soft abdomen, and then tighten the pelvic floor and exhale and pull your abdomen in with a forced abdominal exhale until it moves away from your fingers and your spine fully narrows closer to your spine. Keep the abdomen hard with your exhale muscles. Try now with the abdomen hard and in to breathe into your abdomen, and notice there feels like a different type of stress. You don't want that stress. That's something which, although it gives you limited stability of the spine, it will lock your spine. It will also mean that your peripheral joints will suffer more with doing things, and it will also inhibit your diaphragm and create a stress response that will turn off your immune system, digestive system, reproductive system. There are much better ways to activate your core, and I'll talk about them fully at the end, but one way where you can feel it's possible to tighten your abdomen without feeling that stress is, as I mentioned before, put your fingers in the soft abdomen, relax your abdomen, breathe into your abdomen, bend your knees, and push your sitting bones forward as you lean back. And as you do that, your abdomen will become firm, but it's more pushed out against your fingers. Now, with the abdomen firm, can you breathe into your abdomen? The answer is yes. Now you are firm but calm. And in the world of Indian yoga, they use the term stira sukham asanam. Be firm but calm. And in this way, then, you have protection, you have strength, but you're not inhibiting your diaphragm. You're not putting yourself in a state of flight, fight, freeze, or fear. Much, much better. So understand it's possible, as I demonstrated just then, to always co-activate or simultaneously tense the muscles around any of the 9 main joint complexes in 2 distinct ways. One way will cause tension and restrict blood flow. The other way allows more expansion, still creates stability, but allows blood flow. And we showed that in the neck. The head down, neck back will prevent blood flow to the head and create stability. And throat forward, chin up also creates stability, but allows blood flow to the head and neck. And we can talk about that another time. But I'm going to use now the wrist as the next example, and we're going to do wrist co-activation. And I'm using my wrist because it's analogous to the neck. Before we do it, I want you to feel, how's your stability around your wrist? So what we can do is you kneel, face towards me, like this. Put your hands on the floor. I'm facing sideways so you can see. And with your palms flat, I want you to do what I'm doing first. Grip with your fingers. So make your palms flat, but make your fingertips press down. And then from there, shift the weight forward, shoulders over the fingertips. And if comfortable, bend the elbows. Take all the weight on the hands. Then come back up. So don't let your elbows go backwards. Take the elbows forward over your fingertips. Keep the elbows over your fingertips. Take all the weight in your hands if you can, and bend the elbows if you can. Being on your knees is fine. Being fully off your knees is also fine. See how that feels. Now, I asked you to grip with your fingers. And part of the reason I asked you to grip with your fingers is because this is what will help create the co-activation that you require to keep your wrists stable. So to get the feeling of this, I want you to lift up your hands. You can face me like I'm doing now. And then what I'd like you to do is keep one hand up and just feel the wrist with the other hand. And I want you to flex your wrist. Now when you do that, notice the front of the wrist, the palm side becomes firm, but the back of the hand side becomes relaxed. Now I want you to extend the wrist. Pull the wrist back, and as you extend the wrist, you can maybe sometimes better to do it from below against gravity. Extend your wrist, and the back of the wrist becomes firm, but the palm side becomes relaxed. So again, go flex the wrist, palm side becomes firm, back of hand becomes relaxed. Extend the wrist, back of hand becomes firm, back of wrist becomes firm, front of wrist becomes relaxed. So when one muscle group turns on, opposite muscle group turns off. But the wrist joint complex is not a single joint. There are many joints there. And in fact, the muscles going over the wrist joint complex are not single joint muscles. The muscles going over the wrist joint complex, some of them start above your elbow. Some of them go all the way to your fingertip. So these are multiple joint muscles going across a multiple joint complex, and these muscles have multiple roles. So now these same muscles you can feel when you put your hand again in this position, put the palm against the wrist and flex your fingers. Just your fingers without moving the wrist. You can do it either down or up. When you flex your fingers, you'll notice as the fingers go toward the palm, that will tighten the front of the wrist. But the back of the wrist stays relaxed. You can feel that with your hand. Now what I want you to do is keep your wrist stable, but extend the wrist. Extend the fingers rather. So extending the fingers, go down or up, touch the back of the wrist. Open the fingers, make them extend like I'm doing now. When you do that, the back of the wrist becomes firm, but the palm stays relatively soft. Okay, so when you move your fingers, that also tightens the wrist. When you move your wrist and palm, that tightens the wrist. So what we've got is the possibility that wrist flexion tightens front of wrist, but so does finger flexion. Wrist extension tightens back of wrist, but so does finger extension. So now, because we have a multiple joint complex with multiple joint muscles having multiple roles, we can do two things at the same time and create co-activation or stability around the wrist joint complex in what the Indian yoga people would call a mani bandha. So let's try this. It can be done in two ways. So we can create wrist extensor muscle activity at the back of the wrist by extending the wrist. That tightens the back of the wrist. We can create wrist flexor muscle activity by closing your fingers and essentially making a closed fist. Now with the closed fist, notice there is tension front and back of the wrist. And so if you were to punch someone, you would punch them with a fist which is slightly extended at the wrist and flex the fingers like that. If, on the other hand, you were to flex the fingers, which tightens front of wrist, and flex the wrist, which tightens also front of wrist, and you punch like that, you're not having stability, you're more likely to break your wrist. So to have the wrist stable, fist flexion, finger flexion, and wrist extension is important. Then you can punch. Same is true if you're picking up a bag. You pick up a bag with your fingers flexed and your wrist extended. It's not so easy to pick up a bag with fingers flexed and wrist flexed. It's weaker. So you can apply this when you're doing things like handstands, when you're doing things like push-ups as well. Let's do a push-up again, and I want you to try the two possibilities and see if you can feel the difference. Okay, so what we'll do is I'll get you to put your hands on the floor, palms flat. Now, the hands will have this shape, but what I want you to feel is that you're trying to do that. So put your palms flat to the floor, and once your palms get on the floor, feel like you're going to grip with your fingers. So palms flat, then before bringing the weight on your hands, press onto your fingertips as if trying to grab a section of the floor. Once you've got that feeling, when I do it, my fingertips go white. Then bring the elbows over the fingers and bend the elbows if you wish, knees on or off the floor, I don't mind, whatever's best for you, and notice there's wrist stability. Now come back up. I'm giving you the safe way of doing it first, but now I want you to see what happens if you don't do that. And the reason I'm doing this is because when I travel at conferences around the world, etc., I still hear many people say something which was put out there by even someone like BKS Iyengar as part of an instruction, but he gave a more complex instruction and people seem to have forgotten the full instruction. What BKS Iyengar taught us was that when you're putting your hands on the floor to do a push-up or a handstand, he said, spread your fingers and then place them on the floor. But once you spread your fingers and put them on the floor, he said, then grip with the fingertips. Now, somewhere along the line, people forgot that there was a second instruction. And around the world, all I hear, it seems, is spread with the fingertips. Let's try that, and I'll show you why it doesn't work. But before we do it, I want you to see how it gives some stability. So what I want you to do is open your palm again like this. And now there's a second way of making joint stability around the wrist joint complex. The first way, let's do it again. Finger flexion tightens front of wrist. Wrist extension tightens back of wrist, the closed fist. But you can also tighten front and back of the wrist to create a type of stability in the following way. You can push the palms toward the wrist, which is wrist flexion, and that tightens front of wrist. And I make the fingers go back into extension, that tightens back of wrist. And you can feel this banana-like hand, the fully extended wrist, so slightly flexed wrist, rather extended fingers, that tightens front and back of wrist. It looks like the palm you'd put on your floor, but it gives a little bit of stability, but not much. So you can try that, then we're going to take that away. So I want you to this time put your palms into a bit of flexion, your wrist into a bit of extension. So feel how that tightens front and back of wrist. Now put your hands on the floor. Press on your palms, and now try and lift the fingers up a little bit and bend the elbows And notice it doesn't give us much strength. It won't. Because this particular grip, this particular co-activation, although it tightens around the wrist complex, actually pulls blood in the wrong direction and actually brings the blood toward the fingers and saps the energy from the rest of the body. And I'll show you why in a minute. But I'd like you to see that it actually does give some stability. Because now I want you to try something which, for most people, you have to be very careful of, because I'm taking away all tension around the wrist. So I want you to gently relax the hand, keep the wrist fully relaxed, and then from there, carefully bring the weight toward the hand, bring the elbows toward the fingers, then bend the elbows while the hand is relaxed, and notice that it doesn't feel good at all for most people. It feels like there's no protection for the wrist. So this time, do the way which some people do, which gives some protection. Spread your fingers first, which gives a bit of tightening. Then come on the hand, there's a bit of protection. Now do the one that I've suggested better, which is spread the fingers and grab the floor, palms flat. Now grip with the fingers as if you're trying to grab the floor. That gives the best grip. And then you can bend your elbows, take the weight, elbows toward the fingers, and that gives the best grip. My fingertips are white when I do this. Now, why is this the case? That you can co-activate the muscles around the wrist joint complex in two ways. It appears that both of them make the wrist firm, but one feels better, one feels different. Just confirm, does the wrist feel just as firm? So hold one wrist up, touch your wrist, and make a closed fist. Notice the wrist feels firm, front and back. Now spread the fingers. Now the front and back of the wrist also feels firm. Which one feels firmer? Closed fist, test it. Spread the fingers, test it. Once you practice, both of those methods can make your wrist just as firm. Which one is the most effective to put the hand on the floor with? It depends on what you're trying to do energetically. Because the way it turns out is that this type of co-activation of opposing muscles around the joint complex is synonymous with the term bandha in Indian yoga. And bandha is a subset of mudra. And mudra in Indian yoga and Indian culture is a type of energy control. It's a medium to move blood through your body at the very simplest level. It's a medium to move what the Indian yogis call prana and chitta. So what I'd like you to do is to feel the effect of this. I want you to take one hand up in the air and the other hand closer to the floor and relax your hands. When one hand is up, one hand is down, notice that if you relax your hands, blood will flow down with gravity. The hand in the air becomes lighter, the hand toward the ground becomes heavier because blood will flow down with gravity. Now, if you change your hands, bring your first hand up, the second hand down, it takes a few seconds, and if your hands are totally relaxed, it's gravity that will pull the blood from the hand above down towards your body and into the hand below. So a few seconds, you'll find the hand below will feel heavier, the hand above will feel lighter. Now release. But if you do specific bandha, co-activation around the wrist joint complex, which in Indian yoga we call mani bandha, then you get this possibility of regulating blood flow. So try this, because although people talk about core stability a lot as something which hardens and strengthens your joints, actually a more important function is to regulate blood flow. So check that this is possible, because once you understand this, you can actually get a lot more energy from your practice. So what I'd like you to do is know in advance, because I'm not going to spend too much explaining this, I have other videos on this, that when you make the closed fist, that type of co-activation will actually restrict blood flow to the wrist and the hand and actually pushes blood away from your hand. But if you make an open palm and really extend the wrist and the fingers and flex the wrist slightly like this, that, although it creates stability around the wrist, will pull blood into the hand. Now, this is something which I've had the joy of seeing in my work at RMIT University, where I lecture, and I've had access to a $150,000 infrared camera. And the infrared video camera can actually show this, that within a few seconds, you'll see that this spread fingers actually increases blood flow to the hands. The closed fist actually pushes blood away from the hands. And this is stunning when you see it. You can think about it in this way also, that if you grab a sponge and you squeeze the sponge, that's going to push water out of the sponge. If you open the sponge, that's pull water back into the sponge. Same with your hands. Squeezing the fist will pull blood away from the fist. Opening the fingers will bring blood toward the fingers. So I ask you, if you're doing a handstand, if you're doing a push-up, where do you want most of your blood? Toward the floor, where your hand is, or away from the floor? Well, the answer, of course, is you want most of everything away from the floor. So you get a better result energetically by putting your palms flat and gripping the fingers. So although you're in that shape in a push-up, you're trying to do that. That's why it works better. Okay, so let's just try and prove that it works by trying this. So take your right fist, your right hand, and spread the fingers. Take it up in the air. Take your left fist and make a fist. Now, that left hand will push the blood up away from the flow of gravity. The right hand pulls the blood up toward the hand above against the flow of gravity. And you can feel, maybe it feels normal to you because it's what many people do in postures such as this. But now I'd like you to switch them. I'd like you to take your hand above, make a closed fist, take the hand below and spread the fingers. And what I told you was the closed fist pushes the blood away from the hand. The spread fingers pulls the blood toward the hand. So maybe you can feel it within a few seconds. Now your body feels heavier. The spread fingers pulls the blood down. The closed fist pushes the blood down. But if you swap them again, bottom hand closed fist, top hand spread fingers, that makes most people feel lighter because the closed fist, co-activation in this way, will push blood up away from the palm against the flow of gravity. Spread fingers pulls the blood up against the flow of gravity. And then release. Let's try that on the opposite hand. If you didn't feel that, some people can be just overly tense or insensitive. But I found in groups of more than hundreds of people at the same time, 9 out of 10 people feel this. So you can give me feedback later if you like. Let's try the other hand. Take your left hand up, spread the fingers, take your right hand down, grip with the fingers. And what it makes you feel generally, and I'll turn to face towards you again, is it makes you feel fairly light. But now if you swap the co-activation, make it so your hand above has a closed fist, hand below has spread fingers. And within 2 or 3 seconds, you'll feel a heaviness in the body because now the hand above is pushing the blood down. The hand below is pulling the blood down, making you feel heavier. Now swap the hands again. Open fingers above, closed fist below, and now the energy gets pushed up. So this co-activation of the wrist joint complex can be done in 2 ways. Both of them create stability. However, one way will actually encourage the flow of blood. The other way discourages the flow of blood. Release. I hope you feel this. Try it a few times if you wish. So for these purposes, we've talked about expansive co-activation and compressive co-activation. Around the neck joint complex, when you bring the head down, neck back, that's like making a closed fist. And that is like a compressive co-activation and prevents blood flow from the chest to the head. And that's why when doing breath retention, and sometimes in Indian yoga we call it pranayama, when you hold the breath in, take a breath in, hold the breath in, then it's important to keep the head down, the neck back, and that way if you tighten your abdomen, pressure does not get pushed up to the head. But if, while holding your breath, you lift your head up and you inadvertently tighten the abdomen, increasing intra-abdominal or intrathoracic pressure, that can pull blood up to the head and it can cause headache at best. It can cause a stroke or fainting at worst. You can die if you're not lucky. So it's important that you understand this concept of bandha. Jalandhara bandha, the neck joint complex co-activation, is done generally for breath control with head down, neck back. But when we're talking about meditative states, often it's better to bring the throat forward, chin up, and that's what pulls the energy up to the third eye and the crown chakra. Okay, so now let's look at another one which is very easy to understand, is the ankle joint. So the ankle joint I'm using next because it's similar to your hand. So the ankles and the toes work the same way as your fingers and your wrists. So what I'd like you to do is to stand with your big toes touching, your heels a little bit apart. I'm just going to roll my pants up so you can see my ankles. So I want you to stand with your big toes touching and your heels apart. And when we do that, I want you to raise the feet up off the floor and balance. Now, balance is not easy. You can hold a wall with one hand. And when I say ankles touching, heels apart, I'm just going to stand on my head. Don't do this. I want to show you something so you can see clearly what I'm talking about. My ankles touching and my heels apart. You can see that. Now, heels touching, ankles apart. When we're standing up, I want with your ankle bones touching and your heels apart so that you lift the outer feet. Please do not stand on your head. It's not something people should do lightly. I've been doing it for 40 years and I don't recommend it for most people. So when we stand up, you'll get a better balance around your ankles if when you stand, you touch your big toes together, have your heels slightly separate, then lean forward to the front of the feet, grip with your toes, lift the outer feet, then raise the heels up. And as you lean toward the front of the feet, that will make the toes become pressing down more, and that tightens your calves. And as you lift the outer foot, that tightens outer calves, and the center of the foot can lift up slightly, and that creates a co-activation around the ankle joint complex. So try that. Big toes touching, heels apart, lift the outer feet, and when you lift the outer feet, you can feel it on your outer ankles. Touch the outer ankles, lift the outer feet up, and you'll feel the outer ankles become firm. Maybe you can see that on me, the peroneus muscle. That's an important muscle to tighten for ankle stability, especially if you've got something like an ankle sprain. Then if you notice also, if you feel the back of your knee, if you shift the weight from your heel towards your toes, the back of the knee becomes firm. So what we're doing then is we're tightening the muscles at the back of the ankle. It goes all the way to the back of the knee, in fact. These include things like soleus and, although you won't feel that there, and gastrocnemius, which is a two-joint muscle going from your ankle to your knee. And so when we want to create stability around the ankle joint complex, lift and spread the toes first, place them on the floor, then shift the weight toward the front of the feet, grip with your toes, and then with the big toes touching, heels apart, lift the outer feet. Now raise the heels upwards. And then you've got stability. And by going up and down while keeping ankles touching and heels apart, doing a few like this, keep lifting the outer feet, it's a very good exercise that can help things like ankle joint dysfunction and ankle sprains and stuff like that. You can do 20 or 30 of these throughout the day if you've got an ankle sprain. Lift the outer feet. And that's part of the ankle joint co-activation. All right. Now we can also feel how this will be lost if you let the outer feet drop. So now what we'll do is touch big toes together and drop the outer feet. So you lift the inner arch of the foot. Now try and raise the heels up. And notice how it's not so balanced. So let's do it the good way, then the bad way. So we go spread the toes, grip with the toes, shift the weight forward to the front of the feet, lift the outer feet so ankles touch, heels are apart, raise the heels up. Notice there's some sort of stability and balance. Now with your heels raised off the ground, let your outer ankles drop and your inner ankle arch not touch, inner ankles, and then you lose the ability to balance. So this is something which you can feel. The co-activation is important to create ankle stability. It's very important to relieve things like ankle sprains. Okay. Now, when we're talking about the co-activation around the ankle joint complex, again, there's two types. My suggestion is if your ankles are on the floor, if your feet are on the floor, do like we do with the hands. Grip with the palms and grip with the feet and grip with the toes. So put your palms and feet on the floor and then grip with the toes. And that will give you better balance. So if we're doing it with one leg, you can feel this as well. I want you to lean on your right leg, bend the knee slightly, look at the floor for balance, bend the right leg for balance, come to left toe tip and lift the left leg up in the air. Just balance on one leg. And if you can't do it easily, touch the toe tip. If you really need to, be against the wall. Now come back down. Now, what can make that worse is if you spread the toes and you lift them off the floor. Try this. So again, lean on your right leg, come to left toe tip. If you lift and spread the toes, raise the left leg up, and notice then balance is actually not so good. But if you lift and spread the toes first, come back to the floor, then grip with the toes, like we gripped with our fingers when we're doing the push-up, then lift the leg off the floor. Balance is generally better, unless you crunch the toes a lot. You want to lift them, spread them, then press the toe tips down. That gives you balance. Now the same is going to be true. Let's do the other leg first. We start with the left leg. Just come to right toe tip, bend the left knee, look at the floor for balance. Lift the right leg up, see how your balance is, come back down. Now, this time, do what I'll call the better way. Keep the toes lifted, spread. Now press the toe tips into the ground. Then lift up the leg and see if balance is a bit better. Put the leg back down. Now lift and spread the toes. Then lift the leg up and notice balance is usually worse. You want your toe tips to feel like they're on the ground, because as the toe tips press down, it tightens the back of the ankle joint complex, and that gives the stability, along with things like lifting the outer foot and lifting the center of the arch of the foot, which happens automatically in this case. Now let's try it where you actually come up onto the heel. I want you to feel the difference. If we're going to practice this exercise where you come to the left toe tip, lean on your right leg, use a wall for balance if you need to, raise the right heel up. If you can, let go so you're not touching anything and you find a balance. Now come back down. What will make it better is before you lift off the ground, your heel, you want to grip with your toes. So again, come to left toe tip, lift and spread the right toes, press them onto the floor as far as away from your foot as possible. Bend the knee and shift the weight to the front of your right foot. Grip with your right toes, lift the left leg, hold the wall if you need, raise the heel if you can, and then let go of the left hand against the wall if you're using a wall. And notice when your toes grip, usually it gives you better balance. Now try and not do that. I want you to start by lifting and spreading your toes, lift the left leg, raise the right heel, and notice when your toes are trying to lift up, there is little to no balance. So what you want is, even though it looks like your foot is in that shape, that's a bandha, that gives bandha, but it only gives bandha or co-activation when your leg is in the air. When your leg is on the floor, you want to feel like you're making a closed fist with your feet. So on your second leg, put your left foot on the floor and use the wall if you wish, not if you don't want to. But a general good tip is bend the left leg, grip with your toes, look at the floor for balance, raise the right leg up, then raise the heel up. And if you're gripping with your toes, balance is easy. Come back down. Now try the opposite. Lift and spread the toes. Lift your right leg up. Now with the left toes spread, try and raise your left heel up. And it's difficult, more difficult to balance. So come back down, finish on a good note. Come to right toe tip, bend the left knee, grip with your left toes. Raise the right leg up, then raise the left heel up. And when gripping with your left toes, you get much better balance. This is important. I'm just going to turn a light on because it's getting a bit darker here. And I thought it was on already, but it's not. Okay, so hopefully that's a bit better. And hopefully I haven't gone out of focus. My camera's a bit funny sometimes, so apologies for that. Okay, so now let's work on the knees. When we're working with the knees can also create co-activation. I'm going to go a little bit quicker with this and see if you can feel it. So what we want is to stabilize the muscles around the knee joint complex. And so if you try something like a squat can be a little bit dodgy for people's knees. So try this first and see how it feels for you. Do not do a squat if it doesn't feel good. Start with your legs hip width, face towards me. And then from this position, squat normally or as far down as you can comfortably squat and feel how it feels for your knees. Then carefully come back up. Please don't do anything which feels uncomfortable. Now we're going to do a co-activation around the left knee joint complex. And I'm explaining how to do it. The theory we've talked about, but at least I'll show you how to do the joint co-activation. Then we're going to try and squat again, and you see if it feels different. So for this one, I want you to shift the weight to your right leg, face towards me. Come to the left toe tip, round the back out. And then from there, lead from your core, your lower back, and step the left leg back. Then from there again, round the back out, twist your navel to the right side, then shift the weight to your right leg, keep the hips level and turn your left thigh inwards. Then again, shift the weight to your left leg, again round the back out, and from here, shift the weight back onto your right leg, hold a wall for balance if you need, or look at the floor for balance. Grip with your right toes for balance. Bend the right leg for balance. And with your left leg straight, lift your left leg a little bit off the floor. With your hands on the hips, turn your left thigh more inwards and notice that your buttocks should feel soft. Your hamstring will become firm, the back of the knee. If you move your left thigh toward the right side more, your inner thigh becomes firm. Already this gives a relief to a lot of people's knee problems. Now, to create more coactivation around your knee joint complex, pull up your kneecap, tighten the quadriceps. That you have to voluntarily do. Then spread the toes, as we did when we raised the heels up off the floor, and that will tighten your calf muscles. Then pull the outer foot to the knee, as we did when we raised the heels up. That will tighten your outer calf and help your outer knee. Now do all of them at the same time. Pull up your kneecap, tightens front of thigh. Turn your left thigh inwards, tightens hamstring. Push your left thigh to the right, tightens inner thigh. Round the back out, lift your leg up higher, tightens the hamstring more. And spread the toes, tightens calf. Outer foot toward the knee, tightens outer calf. Now breathe into your abdomen, move your shoulders and relax your face. Then release. Now that should, if you did exactly as I said, tighten all the muscles around the knee joint complex. Now see if that affected your ability to squat. So start with your legs hip width and squat once again and come back up. And many people will find that now the left knee feels like it squats a lot better. See if that's the case for you. It can really help with knee problems. Let's try the other leg. So in this case, lean on your left leg, come to the right toe tip, round the back out. Then from that position, step back your right leg leading from your core. Shift the weight from right leg to left leg, hands on hips. Keep the hips level, turn your right thigh inwards. Shift the weight back to your right leg and emphasize a rounding out of your lower back. Then shift the weight onto your left leg and either hold a wall for balance or look at the floor for balance. Grip with your left toes for balance. Bend the left knee for balance. I'm turning sideways so you can see. And then lift the right leg off the floor if you can. Keep the hands on the hips. Turn the right thigh inwards without dropping the hip down. And that will tighten the inner thigh and the hamstring more. By pushing the right thigh towards your left, that tightens the inner thigh more. By rounding the back out and lifting the heel up, that with the knee straight, that tightens your hamstring more. Hamstring is synergistic with the anterior cruciate ligament, and once the hamstring tightens, it can help so many knee problems. Then if you want to tighten further around the knee joint complex, which many people need, is you pull up the kneecap consciously. That tightens front of thigh. You can spread the toes. That tightens the calves. You can pull the outer foot to knee, tightens outer calf. And we can do all of them together, 5 main tensions. 1, pull up the kneecap, tightens front thighs. 2, turn the thigh inwards, push it to the left, tightens the inner thighs. 3, round the back out, raise the heel up higher, tightens hamstrings. 4, push the base of the big toe further away, tighten the calves. 5, lift the outer foot to the knee, tightens outer calves. Breathe into the abdomen. Then release, bend the knee slightly, come out of the pose. And now squatting should feel quite easy on both legs unless you've got severe knee damage. Okay, this is important. Now let's move a little bit quicker because otherwise we run out of time. Let's work on the hip joint complex. The hip joint complex doesn't so much need stability, but it can be of use still to understand balance. Co-activation around the hip joint complex can happen depending on whether your hip is flexed or extended. It's important to know how to balance. When your hip is flexed, it can be balanced by turning your thigh outwards. When your hip is extended, it's better to balance it by turning your thigh inwards. So what do I mean by that? I want you to lean on your right leg, come to the left toe tip, and I'll turn sideways so you can see, lift up your left leg in the air. Hold a wall for balance if you need to. Hold hands on the left hip at least. And then notice the difference. If you turn your left thigh outward and you feel your left buttocks, it tightens the buttocks a little bit. But you can feel the front of the left hip is already firm. So turning the thigh outwards tightens the buttocks, and that creates balance around the hip joint complex and helps pull the head of the femur back into its socket. But if, with the hands on hips, you don't lift the hip up, turn the left thigh in, that relaxes the back of the hip and causes all the tension to come to the front of the hip, which can displace the femur or the thigh muscle, the thigh bone in the head, in the socket, and cause discomfort. So better, when your hip is flexed, high or low, turn your thigh out. Change legs. So if you now stand on your left leg, face towards me, come to the right toe tip, hold a wall if you need to, or without holding the wall, bend the standing leg, the left leg, grip with your toes, look at the floor for balance. Lift the right leg as high as you can, keep your hands on the hips, and notice the difference. If you turn your right thigh outward, that will tighten the back of the hip. Front of the hip is automatically tightened, and that generally feels better for your hip. But if without lifting the hips, don't lift the hip up, turn your right thigh inwards, that releases the buttocks muscle and tightens the front of the hip excessively and can cause anterior hip pain. So better when your hip is flexed, turn the thigh out. Much better result. Now you can apply this when you're doing things like hamstring stretches. So for example, if we're trying to stretch the right hamstring, you might take your right leg forward, left leg back, right like this, and I'll turn sideways so you can see, and you can try this. If you have the leg in front and you come a third to a halfway forward, see how it feels, then come back up. You often get a better result if you start with your right foot slightly turned inwards and then try to turn your right thigh outward, which is what we did when the leg was in the air. Then push your hip into your heel, go forward, and with your right thigh trying to turn outwards, that gives better hip balance, hip muscle coactivation. It creates hip bandha, called Kati bandha. Bend the knee, push the hips forward, come back up. Let's try not do that. Let's try and do the opposite and notice the imbalance that arises. So have your right leg forward still. This time try and turn your right thigh in and go forward. And notice it doesn't feel as good for the spine or the hips. So bend the knee, come back up, better. Keep your right leg forward, turn your right foot slightly in, try and turn the right thigh out. Then bend forward from the hips, bend the knee, come back up, and it usually feels better. Let's quickly do it in the left leg forward, right leg back, turn the left thigh slightly in, go forward over your left leg, and then come back up. I'll just turn sideways so you can see better. This time, with your left foot turned in slightly, consciously try and turn the left thigh out, almost by squeezing your left heel inwards, pushing your left big toe out. Remember, lift the outer feet. Then go forward, and then bend the knee, push the hips forward, come back up. It's important when you're doing this to push your hip toward the heel. Don't let your sitting bones lift up. Otherwise, you overstretch the hamstring. Let's do what I'll call now the wrong movement. Although there's no wrong or right as such with anything, this is the way that tends to cause most problem with most people. So with your left foot turned inwards, now try and turn the left thigh inwards while going forward, and it feels less comfortable for most people. So then bend the knee, come back up. Better to create co-activation of the opposing muscles around the hip joint complex, which is a type of core stability for the hip, which in Indian yoga is called Kati bandha. Have the left foot slightly turned in and push your sitting bones towards your foot as if you're trying to stretch them out with your feet. Turn the left thigh out. Lift the outer foot, go forward, and you get a much better ability to bend forward, much better stability of the hips. Push your left hip toward the foot, bend the knee if you need, and come back up. Better. And the same is going to be true in the hip extension motion, except in the back leg of all these poses, like the warrior, etc., you want to do the one where I said pull up the kneecap and turn the left thigh in. So in poses like the warrior posture, if your left leg is back and right leg is forward, bend the right knee, pull up your left kneecap. Although your left foot is turned out, try and turn the left thigh in. And as you try and turn the left thigh in, you'll feel your hamstring firms, inner thigh firms. But if you try and turn the left thigh out, that relaxes the hamstring and inner thigh, gives you less stability. I'll be quick with this one. So change legs, left leg forward, right leg back. Even in simple postures like the triangle posture, if you've got your left hand on your left ankle and right hand up in the air. So what we want is this back hip, which is extended. The best bandha will come for co-activation if you keep the right foot turned out, like I've done here, but tighten the front of the thigh by pulling up your kneecap, then try and turn your right thigh in. And that will firm the inner thigh and releases around your sacroiliac joint, which is sacroiliac joint is part of your hip joint complex. If you turn your right thigh out, that will harden around the sacroiliac joint. So actually, when we did this exercise before for the knee, turn the right thigh in, turn the right thigh out. Turning the right thigh in helps strengthen your knee, but it also gives you a kati bandha, a hip bandha in a hip extension, which is really good to relieve lower back pain and around the hip joint complex, sacroiliac joint especially. All right, now let's move on to the elbow and the shoulder before we quickly take a look at the abdomen and the chest. Okay, so when we're looking at the elbow joint complex, the elbow joint complex can co-activate in two ways. When you do elbow bending is done by the biceps or the elbow flexors, biceps brachialis, we mostly know the biceps. Elbow extension, which is what we use for a push-up, is done by the triceps. So you can feel that if your palms are on the floor, you can try this. If you bend your elbow, the triceps becomes active, you can feel it, but the biceps becomes weak. You can try that in both arms. So lean on your left hand, for example, and bend your left elbow a bit. Notice how if you lean on your hand, your triceps, the back of the elbow upper arm muscles becomes firm, biceps becomes weak. Because when one muscle group turns on, the opposite muscle group turns off. But if you want joint stability, even like around the core, any part of the body, the best way of creating joint stability is by simultaneously tensing the opposing muscles around a joint complex, which in this case means can you tighten biceps and triceps at the same time? Can you tighten elbow flexors and elbow extensors at the same time? Elbow extensors are muscles like the triceps, which straighten the elbow. Elbow flexors are muscles like the biceps, which bend the elbow. The only way this is possible is because to do co-activation is the fact that the biceps has dual function. Biceps is not just a muscle which bends the elbow. And you'll notice that if you bend your elbow, you can get the shape of a biceps happening. But if you turn your palm down, that biceps doesn't look as strong. So make a bulging biceps if you can. Now notice the bulging biceps looks stronger if your palm faces towards you. But now if you push your palm away from you, the biceps is not as strong. Because the act of turning your palm up, supination, causes the biceps to become more active. So the biceps has two main roles. It flexes the elbow, but it also creates supination. So you can feel that if you start with your palms facing down and elbows bent, biceps is weaker, but palms facing up makes the biceps stronger. So the biceps has this additional role of making the palm turn upwards. So how can you use this in things like doing a push-up? Well, what we do is while doing a push-up, you have this shape of the elbows bent or straight and the palms on the floor. Imagine my floor is just here. To create a stronger, more stable elbow, keep your palms where they are, but try and squeeze the heel of the hand inwards, as if you're doing that, as if you're trying to turn the palm to face towards you. Of course, the palm will stay on the floor, but it feels like your heel of the hand is squeezing inwards. So try it. Put your palms on the floor and face towards me, like I've said before. Palms flat, fingers grip to create the wrist co-activation, also called Mani Bandha. Round the back out. Push the hips toward the hand so the elbow stays over the wrist. Now keep your palms flat, fingers grip so the fingertips are white. Now squeeze the heel of the hand inward slightly, and that will activate the biceps. So fingers grip, heel of hand squeeze in, and bend the elbows. Keep the fingers gripping, heel of hand squeezing in, come back up. And notice if that felt a bit stronger. Can you check? What about doing the opposite? Keep the hands in this shape, but try and push the heel of the hand outwards. Careful, it'll make your hands feel weaker. Palms flat, fingers grip, push the heel of the hand outwards, bend the elbow, and usually there's a distinct weakness that comes into your wrist like that, into your elbow especially. So finish on a good note, the one that works best, the one you want to remember. Palms flat, fingers grip, heel of hand squeeze inwards, will create co-activation of triceps, elbow extensors, and biceps, the elbow flexors, which in this case are working as supinators. Palms flat, fingers grip, push up position, push the shoulders and elbows forward over the wrist, then fingers grip, squeeze the heel of the hand inwards, and then go down, keep the fingers gripping, heel of hand squeezing inwards, come back up, Go down as far or as little as you wish, and notice it feels a bit stronger. All right. Okay, so now what we do is work on the shoulder. The shoulder joint complex is a joint complex which has the muscles, say, above the shoulder and below the shoulder. Below the shoulder is the armpits, the muscles in front of the shoulder and the muscles behind the shoulder. If you want to create co-activation around the shoulder joint complex, there's a couple of ways you do it in a couple of different positions. One is if you take your left arm for a moment and you lift up your elbow like I've done it, notice the muscles above the shoulder are firm. Easy to make them firm. But if you feel under the armpit muscles are soft. Now, if you squeeze your elbow into the side of the body, that makes your armpit firm. But now feel the outside above the shoulder, that's soft. So if we want to tighten above and below the shoulder at the same time, we have to find another way of tightening the armpit which does not inhibit the tension of the upper shoulder. So there are several ways of tightening the armpit. One way is to simply push the shoulder blade down. So hold your right hand under your left armpit and push the armpit straight down. Push the shoulder blade, the scapula straight down. And as you push it down, that tightens the armpit. That's one way of tightening the armpit. And another way of tightening the armpit is to turn the elbow inwards or turn the shoulder inwards. So lift the shoulder up, turn the shoulder in, and your armpit becomes firm. A third way of tightening the armpit is to squeeze the elbow inwards, and that tightens the armpit. But squeezing the elbow inwards turns off the muscles in the outer shoulder, so it won't be helpful for co-activation. So if you want to create co-activation on the muscles around the shoulder joint complex, in this position here, for example, take your arm up, horizontal, upper arm parallel to your shoulders, and then that tightens above the shoulder. Now push your armpit down, and that tightens below the shoulder. And then above and below shoulder are both firm, and that gives you stability. Okay, true with the other arm. So if you want to create stability in your right shoulder, feel the difference. Push your armpit down, lift the elbow up, and now above and below shoulder become firm. But if you lift your shoulder blade up, only above the shoulder is firm and below the shoulder is weak. Better for stability, push the armpit down, tightens below the armpit, lift the elbow up, tightens above the armpit. And then from that position, then we've got core stability. I've got my phone on because I'm just checking that if someone needs to call me like Stefan to tell me the voice is not working, I'll check it. But he's not calling me, so I'm assuming he can still hear me. And that might have been someone offering a charity or something. But I can't talk to them right now. Okay, so the thing is, many people will over-tighten the armpits. And what I said to you before was that these type of co-activations will actually create inhibition of blood flow in some cases and encouragement of blood flow in other cases. So if you overdo tightening the armpit, you can actually stop blood flow to the wrist. So if you want to try this, you can do all those tightening of the armpit at the same time and notice if your wrist pulse stops. So take the first three fingers of your right hand on the radial or thumb side of your left hand and feel the pulse. Then notice if you can stop your pulse by doing the following things. Push your armpit down, let go of your pulse, turn the shoulder in, it further tightens the armpits, squeeze your elbow inwards, it further tightens the armpits, now go for your pulse, feel your pulse from behind the back. And if you keep pushing the armpit down, keep turning the shoulder in, keep squeezing the elbow inwards, most people can feel their pulse stop. And then if you release, bring the arm out in front, the armpit goes soft, you can feel your pulse. So taking the armpit to firm and pulling the shoulder blade down can be a useful way of tightening around the shoulder joint complex, which can give good stability in postures, say, for example, like this one. Say, for example, you're doing this position, which we sometimes call Marichasana, like this, in yoga. It's important that when the shoulder turns in, it will tend to tighten certain muscles, but to create stability, push the armpit down, and that makes your shoulder less likely to dislocate. If you let your shoulder blade lift up in this one, it can cause dislocation of the shoulder. So it's important to tighten your armpit in that type of position by pushing the shoulder down. But if you always tighten your armpit, you block blood flow to your hands. So here's something very important. When you take your arms up into the ceiling like this, notice if I lift my arms up, I'm no longer pulling my shoulders down. This is really important. Try it. Take your arms up in the air. Notice with my arms, my shoulders are right past my ears. I'm reaching up as high as I can, and I'm holding my body in the same way that I'd be hanging off, say, a monkey bar. But many people, when they take their arms up, are either unconsciously or consciously pulling the shoulder blades down. Pulling the shoulder blades down will not create stability, and it doesn't really help you. And you can feel that. Take your left arm up, hold your armpit with your right hand, pull the shoulder down. Notice it doesn't tighten the armpit. If your arm is horizontal to the floor and you pull your shoulder down, it does tighten the armpit. But when your arm is in the air, pulling the shoulder down does not tighten the armpit. In this case, pushing the armpit in the direction it's pointing tightens the armpit. So when your arm is up, your armpit points forward, push your armpit forward, and then the armpit firms. So what we want to create a shoulder bandha is take the elbow in one direction and the armpit in the opposite direction. So with your right hand now, lift up your right arm, and what we do is go as high as you can up. You might feel this neck tension. What can release the neck tension is to tighten your armpits, not by pulling the shoulder down. Push the armpit forward. And now the armpit going forward will tighten the underarm. The elbow going upward tightens above the shoulder. Now front and back of shoulder are firm. But if you simply lift the arm up and think your neck is too tense and pull the shoulder blade down, all you get is you become a shorter person. So take the arm up, and that makes you taller. Then to create core activation, if you need it to stabilize your shoulder joint complex, push your armpit forward. And that will tighten your armpit. That's particularly helpful in things like the dog pose. Push your armpit towards your feet. Push your hands away from your feet. And that creates the stability around the shoulder joint complex. But to make a mistake of lifting your arms up and simply pulling the shoulders down, that's not helpful. It's arms up, armpits forward, and that creates the shoulder joint stability. And once the shoulder joint stability is there, you get a much better result. All right, now we're going to come to the last 10 minutes, and I'm going to focus on the Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha, and both those terms are Indian yoga terms, which in some way have been confused with core stability. So where is your core? Your core is between your pubic bone and your navel, inside. The core is between your tailbone, your sitting bones, and the top of the hips, around the L5-S1 junction, inside. It's between your pelvic floor and your diaphragm, between them inside. So core stability is the ability to stabilize this trunk region, this lower trunk region especially, and it can be done in several ways. As I said earlier on, I alluded to the fact that it can either be done in a way which gives you strength and calmness, or strength and tension. Strength and tension can be of some limited value, but if you're not careful, strength and tension will wear you out, make you stressed, cause internal trauma, and turn off your immune system, reproductive system, digestive system, and make your subconscious emotions, fear, anger, aggression, lack of trust, lack of safety. So what we want is to have a very firm core, like in this case, my core can be made very firm. And to me, it feels extremely firm. I don't walk around like that all day. I don't need to. Generally, I'll walk around with my abdomen soft, and I don't need to harden my abdomen until I'm doing something that requires it. It's a mistake to walk around with your abdomen hard all day. So if you see someone walking up to you and you can see well-defined abdominal muscles as they're walking, you go, why are their muscles so tense? Would they sleep like that? If you keep a muscle tense all the time, it becomes as dysfunctional as a muscle which can never turn on. Any muscle you can't relax is as useless as a muscle you can't turn on. So what you want to make sure before you have any functional core stability is, can you relax your abdomen fully? If you notice here, my abdomen is fully soft. If you take your abdomen, how much can you massage it? I can massage it fully. Now, when the physiotherapists of the late 1980s and early 1990s decided to work on the core, what they found was that the best results they could get came when a person could co-activate the specific muscles of the lower trunk, which were perineum, which is the muscle between the anus and the genitals, not the anus, not the genital, so between the anus and the urethra rather, not the anus, not the urethra. Second one is the transverse abdominis, the belt-like muscle that goes around the waist. Third one is the multifidus, which are small extensor muscles of the lower back. So these muscles, when co-activated or simultaneously tensors, form a belt-like structure around your lower trunk and seem to help some cases of stability where required. Now, have you been told, pull your lower abdomen in? Have you been told to tighten the pelvic floor? You've probably heard it, but erroneously, many people make the following mistakes. If I wish to pull my lower abdomen in, look at it now. This is my abdomen soft. And if I pull my lower abdomen in, my upper abdomen remains out and soft. Only the lower is in. In fact, my lower is in, but it's also soft. I can pull my upper abdomen in and keep my lower abdomen out. Lower is soft, even upper is soft. It's important you learn to be able to roll the abdomen. That's not something you're going to learn overnight, but it's something which can be very therapeutic. And without it, you haven't got good liver control, you haven't got good internal organ control. So the lower abdomen is not going to be able to work properly if when you feel your abdomen, just try it now, feel above and below the navel, make it soft. Now pull your lower abdomen in and check, is your upper still soft or did it become harder? If it went harder, then you didn't just tighten lower abdomen, you also tightened upper abdomen, and invariably that led to inhibition of your diaphragm. Check, is your diaphragm still able to function? Hold your chest, hold your abdomen. Breathe into your abdomen. You should feel the abdomen swell and expand without moving your chest. Let the air out by itself. Now, pull your lower abdomen in. Now, with your lower abdomen in, can you breathe into your abdomen without moving the chest? I can. But if you felt your chest moved, then you've inhibited your diaphragm and it caused stress. The same is going to be true with your perineum. When we talk about in Indian yoga, Mula Bandha relates to the perineum. It's the center of your pelvic floor. It does not relate to anus, does not relate to the urethra. So can you tighten just the center of your pelvic floor, not the anus, not the urethra? In my observation, about 1 in 20 people can. It's not easy to do. But if you can do it, check for a second, because if you can do it, you should still be able to breathe diaphragmatically. So try this for a moment. Relax your abdomen. And then with the abdomen relaxed, breathe into your abdomen. And you should be able to feel an expansion and a softness and a relaxation in the abdomen. Let the air come out. Now, I want you to tighten all of your pelvic floor, including anus, including urethra, as if, and I know it sounds crazy, but as if you're about to stop having diarrhea or stop yourself urinating. Tighten everything in your pelvic floor. Now, with your pelvic floor fully tight, try breathing into your abdomen. And notice the breath probably went higher up into your chest. Why? Because you could no longer breathe diaphragmatically because it puts you into a state of stress. Let me assure you that if you can get just the perineum to be firm, not the anus, it's a different story. So how do you get the perineum to be firm, not the anus? Well, in the beginning, I can give you a couple of simple steps. It'll take most people some time. In the beginning, the simplest way is to shift the weight to the front of the feet when you're standing. And if you feel that, you'll find it's easier to tighten the perineum, not the anus, not the urethra. But that's going perhaps a bit above the level of what we're discussing at the moment. Note that what the physiotherapists of the late 1980s suggested was that when we get this core stability, which includes perineum, transverse abdominis, especially lower transverse abdominis, and the lower spinal multifidus, once one comes on, all three come on. So what you'll find is if you're able to bring the lower abdomen in, as I'm doing here, a healthy person will feel their perineum also engages, and I can feel that. Now, here's where I ask you to look into your inner self, and I'm not making this a public video because I'm asking you to come, but I wouldn't show this publicly because it looks funny. I want you to feel for your inner self. Hold with one thumb through your clothes the mouth of the anus. Hold with the one finger, middle finger. Hold the other middle finger on your perineum. Now, if you tighten or pull in your lower abdomen, what you can find, if you can do that, is the perineum becomes a bit firm, not the anus. But of course, if you can't tighten the lower abdomen, without tightening upper, you'll feel everything tense. Maybe it's a bit easier. Try this. Bring the weight to the front of the feet. Draw the lower abdomen in, and that tightens the perineum a bit easier. But if you bring the weight to your heels, try and draw the lower abdomen in, it may be a bit harder. So people find a general better result if they shift the weight to the front of the feet, because by pressing on the front of the feet, physiotherapy studies have shown that that seems to cause an activation of your perineum a bit easier. Try this, experiment with this. This is only a short talk, so I can only give you so much in a short talk. Now, what I'd like you to do next is to find the different ways of firming the abdomen. What you want is to firm the abdomen in a way which does not restrict blood flow. But what I need to do is just give you a demonstration first. The full form of this lecture is on my membership site. I talk a lot about the Mula Bandha and the Uddiyana Bandha, the core stability stuff, on my membership site at simonborg-olivier.com, and you can go there and join. It's a very small fee. Once a month you get a lecture for 2 hours a week, which is sometimes a class, sometimes a lecture, sometimes answering questions. And go to simonborg-olivier.com for that if you wish. I also talk a lot about bandha and co-activation in the peripheral joints in my course called 84 Postures for Strength, Flexibility and Fitness. And that's a really fantastic course if you're doing stuff that requires strengthening around the core or strengthening around any part of the body. But when we're talking about stability for the lower trunk, we're talking about, in yoga, Mula Bandha relates to this lower abdominal region from the base of the ribs to the pelvic floor. Uddiyana Bandha relates to the chest upwards. Now, many people are confused in the world of yoga. Many people think Mula Bandha is just the pelvic floor. It's not. It is the perineum, not anus, not urethra, and it relates to lower abdominal muscles, other abdominal muscles, some back muscles. And different types of this Mula Bandha will either cause co-activation of the muscles around the trunk, which allows blood flow with stability, or which disallows blood flow with stability. And the one that disallows blood flow does not give as much stability as the one that allows blood flow. So you're much better off being able to firm your abdomen in a way where you can still breathe into it. Why? Because when you can breathe into the abdomen, the diaphragm moves downwards. And as the diaphragm moves downwards, it increases the intra-abdominal pressure. And that pressure can go out to the rest of your body. You do not want to be in a state where all you can breathe into is your chest. Chest breathing, if it's done without abdominal breathing, is just stressful breathing. If you breathe in the chest after breathing in your abdomen, so abdomen expands, then chest expands, that's a different story. But most people can't do that. Now let me show you what's called Uddiyana Bandha. Many people think that Uddiyana Bandha is simply pulling the abdomen in. But how can you pull the abdomen in? I can pull the abdomen in 4 different ways. One way is by tightening my exhale muscles. These are the muscles called the muscles of forced abdominal exhalation. And when I exhale fully, like so you can see my fingers touching my soft abdomen, I go exhale fully. My abdomen pulls away from my fingers, but I've tightened my abdomen with oblique muscles, and they will inhibit my diaphragm, cause stress, lock my spine, and cause limited strength. Okay? A second way of tightening my abdominal muscles and pulling my navel toward my spine is to simply move my trunk by twisting it or by leaning back, and my abdomen goes in, but not so far. And that will keep firmness but calmness. When I touch my abdomen, when I do this, and I lean back, you see my abdomen pushes into my fingers. When I twist, my abdomen pushes into my fingers. And this I explain more in my video entitled, Is it correct to pull the navel to the spine, yes or no? Answer is yes and no. Go to yogasynergy.com YouTube channel for that. Okay, I can try and link to it later on. Another way of moving the navel toward the spine is by using transverse abdominis, which I said is part of the Mula Bandha. But a 4th distinct way of pulling the navel to the spine is by expanding the chest. Now watch, I'm going to relax my abdomen fully and expand my chest as if I'm breathing into the chest, but not. Watch. So what I did then was I pretended to breathe in my chest. This is my real breath to my chest. And I did that with my abdomen soft. Most people can't breathe into their chest with their abdomen soft. You check. Check later maybe. First of all, tighten your abdomen, breathe in the chest, then release the abdomen. Let it go fully soft. Now try and breathe in the chest. Is it as easy? Probably not. And if you expand the abdomen, now try and breathe in the chest, it's very hard to breathe in the chest. Most people depend on tightening the pelvic floor, pulling in their abdomen, tightening it, then breathing in the chest. But that's just stressful breathing. Okay? So, when I do what's called Uddiyana Bandha, something which I've done since I was 8 years old, taught to me by Basil Brown, who was an Olympic athlete, learned from Indian yogis in South Africa, in Rhodesia actually, in 1968. He taught me this. It's a mock inhalation to the chest, as if inhaling to the chest, but not, and it's called in Indian yoga Uddiyana Bandha, an expansive Uddiyana Bandha. Watch. To do it, if you want to learn it, and I have other courses to show you this, helps if you tighten the armpits, push the hands against the thighs, and the armpit pressure will help expand the chest. I relax my abdomen, and I hold my breath out, having exhaled first. Then I relax my abdomen, hold the breath out, and pretend to breathe in the chest like this. It looked like I drew my navel to my spine, hence many people think that if you pull your navel in, it's Uddiyana Bandha. But if the navel comes inwards because you've expanded your chest, this is not Uddiyana Bandha. If the navel comes in rather because you've expanded the chest, it's a type of Uddiyana Bandha, but that won't give you stability. That will make your trunk weakest. What we want is the expansion of the chest to be done for times when you don't need stability. As soon as you expand your chest, you're weaker. What we want is to co-activate the muscles of the chest by contracting the chest. Now this again goes above and beyond the call of this talk in an hour and a half. Maybe I can talk about it more later. But if you want to feel the real Uddiyana Bandha, it comes when you feel the rib cage, and then try for a moment what it feels like to co-activate the intercostal muscles. Because if you make a fast breath into the chest, feel your rib cage muscles become active. But if you let the air out softly, the rib cage muscles go soft. But rib cage muscles will tighten in two ways. One, they will tighten to expand your chest. Another, they will tighten to compress the chest. So feel your hands on your rib cage, then take a fast breath into the chest. And the rib cage muscles become firm. Now let the air come out softly, and the rib cage muscles go soft. But another way of tightening the rib cage muscles, which actually creates a lot more strength, is to make a forced breath out from the chest. So try this. Try not to spit into your camera or spit on someone else. Take a breath in. Hold the breath in. Hold your ribs, and now make a fast, forced breath out from the chest, and feel how that tightens your rib cage muscles. When you do that, notice the abdomen also became firm. When you do this, then, what you've got is an Uddiyana Bandha of compression. And what you'll find is that will give strength. And as an example for this, what I'd like you to do is try this simple exercise. Can you protect your back with Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha with a type of core stability? You can create core stability in your chest with an exhale. And keep your lower ribs inwards as if you're exhaling from your chest. You can create stability in a calm way in your abdomen by doing a few different things. Feel your abdomen. You'll find you can firm it in a way by squeezing your thighs inwards. Put your fingers in the soft abdomen. Squeeze your thighs inwards, and you'll feel the abdomen pushes outwards against your fingers. But can you breathe into the abdomen? Answer is yes. If you push your feet outwards, that will firm your abdomen because it tightens the outer hips, which tighten the outer trunk. Can you do that with your abdomen? Can you make your abdomen firm by pushing the thighs outwards? Answer is usually yes. Can you tighten your abdomen by trying to turn your thighs in? Try this. Have your legs hip width apart. Bend the knees slightly. Squeeze your big toes inwards. It tightens your inner thighs, which will tighten your abdomen. Now push your heels outwards, which tightens outer thighs, which tightens your abdomen further. Now try and turn the thighs in, and that tightens the abdomen further. Now your abdomen is firm, but if you breathe into the abdomen, you'll find it's firm but calm. Now from there, Make the chest. Exhale. Then breathe into the abdomen. Exhale from the chest, inhale to the abdomen, and now try and squash your back. Lift the tailbone up and back, pull the shoulders down and back. Breathe into the abdomen, turn your thighs in. Breathe out from the chest, turn your thighs more in to firm you. Breathe into the abdomen to calm you. Exhale from the chest to firm you more. Inhale, abdomen, thighs turn in, lean back. Exhale, chest. And if you want to make it a stronger bend, curl your tailbone up, pull the shoulders down. But that will squash your back if you're doing the wrong thing. Be careful. Now come back up. If, on the other hand, you do that same thing and do as many people are taught, which is to inhale to the chest and exhale to tighten pelvic floor and abdomen, you will not get the right core stability. You will just get stressed. So try it for a moment if you wish. Try this. Bend the knees slightly. Then exhale, tighten the pelvic floor, all of it, and the abdomen. Then inhale to the chest, which is the only place you can breathe when you're doing this. Exhale, tighten pelvic floor and abdomen. Inhale to the chest and keep breathing like that. Exhale, pelvic floor, abdomen, inhale, chest. Try and curl the tailbone up, shoulders down. Try and lean back. Exhale, pelvic floor, abdomen, inhale, chest. Exhale, pelvic floor, abdomen, inhale, chest. Come back up. It doesn't feel nice. These are the wrong ways to create stability. Better exhale from the chest, which creates a co-activation around the rib joint complex, and inhale to the abdomen, which will pull your diaphragm down. Diaphragm is one of the most important core muscles. You must be able to use it. And as you're using it, I want you to firm your abdomen by turning your thighs in and squeezing heel out, big toe in. So start with your feet slightly turned out, about hip width apart. Bend the knees slightly. Turn your thighs inwards. Squeeze big toe in, heel out, opposite to what many people teach. Then, from that position, that should firm you. A little bit at least. Check your abdomen is a bit firm. Can you breathe in there? Then exhale to the chest. Inhale abdomen, exhale chest. Now you're stable with a compressive Uddiyana Bandha and stable with an expansive Mula Bandha. And then from there, tailbone up and back, shoulders down and back. Inhale abdomen, exhale chest, and lean back. Inhale abdomen, which is firm but calm. Exhale chest. Notice I'm fully relaxed. I'm squashing my back, but it doesn't feel like a problem because I have these bandhas. Turn your thighs in. Feet turn out, thighs turn in. Big toes squeeze in, heels squeeze out. And breathe into the abdomen, out from the chest, then come back up. Do not do anything which hurts. There's so much more about this that you need to understand and appreciate. My recommendation is when practicing, do it in a way where it feels pleasant while you're doing it. If you have to do something to protect your joints while you're practicing, it can cause big problems. So what I want you to think about is doing simple, gentle movements. Stuff which does not cause problem. Let's have a simple, gentle practice. Just copy me if you wish. These are simple movements where instead of locking the core, you move from your core. Start with the knees bent. Move actively. Move from your core. Breathe naturally from your core and move fluidly. Do not think tighten the abdomen. This is moving from the core. Bend the knees slightly. Round out the lower back, upper back. Take the shoulders forward and up. Breathe into the abdomen. Then push the pubic bone up, move the navel outwards and bring the arms forward and down and keep your eyes on me. Then keep the back lengthened. Push the pubic bone down, expand the belly and the chest, keep the chin in. Then move the lower back down and back, allow the shoulders to roll in and come forward and up with your arms and forward and down with your arms. Then lengthen the left lower back, take the left side to lengthen. And if you wish, move the hips to the left. Bend the knees. Bring the right arm back to the center and bring both arms up. Then bring both arms forward and down. Then lengthen the right side of your body. Move the hips to the right if you wish. Keep the back rounded out, lengthened. Bend the knees, come back to the center and bring both arms forward and up. Then bring both arms forward and down. Round the back out slightly and twist the trunk to the right. Then expand the front of the body and twist further to the right. If you wish, twist your hips to the right, but squeeze the right heel in to tighten your thigh. Squeeze left big toe in. Then draw the lower abdomen in and move right arm under the left. Then bring the arms to cross over and expand the back of the body while turning your thighs in, and expand the belly and chest, pull your shoulders back. Draw the lower abdomen in, allow your shoulders to lift up, forward and down. Then round the back out slightly and twist the spine, not the hips to the left, in a slight forward bend. Move the hips over the toes and expand the front of the body without shortening the back. Bend the knees slightly, and if you wish, twist from the hips, allow the hips to turn, and stabilize your hips and knees by squeezing the left heel in, right big toe in. Then move the left arm onto the right, moving from your core. Then bring the left arm under the right, cross the arms. Expand the back of the body, turn your thighs in. Expand the front of the body, breathe into the abdomen. Bend the knees, allow the shoulders to lift forward, then down, and finish like we started by expanding lower back, upper back. Take the shoulders forward and up, and breathe into the abdomen. Then draw the lower abdomen in and bring the arms forward and down. I have lots of little practices like this on my YouTube channel, on my membership site, and in the online courses that we have. Please consider going to simonborgolivier.com or yogasynergy.com. We have lots of courses. Let me just finish with an advanced demonstration of Uddiyana Bandha in the expansive form with my breath held out, and Mula Bandha in its either compressive form or expansive form. The compressive, one aspect of the compressive form of Mula Bandha shows oblique muscles, and you'll see them here. The expansive form of Mula Bandha shows the rectus abdominis. And let me finish with this demonstration. It's something which is less used for stability and more used for energy flow. I'll start by showing my oblique muscles, then my rectus abdominis, and then I'm going to roll and control them together. Watch. I'll come a bit closer perhaps. I begin with an in-breath, then I'm going to breathe out and hold my breath out and control my chest expansion like inhale, the expansive Uddiyana Bandha, and then oscillate with the compressive and expansive Mula Bandha, which are co-activations or simultaneous tensing of the muscles, which are on the opposite side of the chest and abdominal or lower back and upper back joint complexes. Watch. This is understanding how the core works. And this core control, which you can see here, I'm using my core muscles to roll up and down. Now I'm using my core muscles to roll in a circle. Understanding how to move your core rather than lock the core. Although I can make my core as hard as I like, I can also make it as soft as I like. This is really important. But the idea of core stability is very misunderstood. Do not create core stability unless you can breathe naturally into your abdomen. And the idea of core stability is essentially a co-activation of opposing muscles around the joint complex we call the waist, but you can create similar, more useful co-activation by compressing the chest. Core stability can be applied to each of the 9 joint complexes: ankles, knees, hips, waist, chest, neck, shoulders, elbows, wrists. The core stability of the lower waist, or the waist itself, the lower trunk, is analogous to Mula Bandha in Indian Yoga, and Uddiyana Bandha is analogous to the chest co-activation. For strength, you better have a compressive co-activation of the chest and an expansive co-activation of the waist. The other way round, compressive waist and expansive chest, is not useful for stability, but more useful for energy flow. In some situations that's right, it's right, but not if you're trying to protect your back or use the chest. There's a lot to this. I recommend my course called The Applied Anatomy Physiology of Yoga. You can get that from yogasynergy.com. I also have 84 postures for strength, flexibility, and fitness. You can come to either of the websites. I have simonborgolivier.com you can go to, and you can get access to my membership site. And on that membership site, there's the possibility of seeing a lecture for 2 hours each week, which I'm about to do now. I'm running a bit late. And also the possibility of seeing many sessions recorded, including a longer lecture of this. I want to say thank you for coming here tonight. I want to say thank you very much for being here. I'll just come to sign off. Are there any important questions? First of all, thank you very much to Yoga Steph for looking after me and making sure the sound was good. Thank you, Talia, for being here from Switzerland. Nama, hello from India. Sumi, hello from Indonesia. Donna, hello from California. Wow, Corey, hello from Brisbane. Nikki, hello from Brisbane. Thank you guys. Anna, good morning from Switzerland. Miriam from Israel, thank you. Hi. Yoga Steph, thank you for looking after us from London. Geza Huber, good morning from Germany. I miss you, brother, and love you guys. Thank you very, very much for being here. And I'll come next week, I think, at this stage. I'll try and send you a message. Sorry about the technical issues. I love you all, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for everything. Hey, everyone. Bye-bye.